Well, good evening, everybody. I am back. I know you all missed me. I've been gone for about 50 days. So I am back and I'm excited to come back with an amazing woman, Miss Andrea. I am looking forward to what she is going to share today. I'm not going to spill any secrets yet. I'm going to let her do that. But I am Dr. Sorelda Herbin, your host for the Married to My Purpose podcast, where we talk about real stories, real experiences, and real talks on being married to your purpose. And today is no different. So we are going to start off by saying, hi, Andrea. Thank you for coming on tonight.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm loving the glasses. We'll have to swap. I got a whole stash of glasses myself. So I will definitely have to be calling you after this to figure out where you got them. But listen,
Okay.
let's jump right in. I want to know a little bit about you, what you do, what your passion is, what your why is, and we'll just have a brief conversation about who you are and what you do. The floor is
I
yours.
I would love that. So just by way of introduction, tell you a little bit about myself. I trained to be a diplomat. I got my undergraduate at Georgetown University's School of Foreign Service. I then went to the uh, Clark Atlanta University
Mm,
and got my master's in international affairs. I wrote my master's thesis during a civil war in Sri Lanka. After that, I
wow.
went and got an Ivy League MBA as a single mother at Columbia Business School. Today, I am a corporate talent scout. I'm an executive talent strategist, a CEO whisperer, a board strategist, and an equity architect. What I do is I match talent to value. I reshape who gets seen, who gets heard, and who gets hired at the top. I do hard things. I navigate tense spaces to unlock access, elevate overlooked talent, and drive results where it matters most. That is
Okay.
who I am.
That is a lot. And there are some things that I need to unpack that you said. We're going to start off with the CEO whisperer. Okay, you have got to tell me about what that is, okay? And then the diversity, I think you said diversity architect if I can recall
I
correctly.
said equity since diversity is now a four-letter word, but we'll talk about that.
Yes. Go ahead. The CEO whisperer. What is that? I've never heard
So
it. Never heard the term.
I work at the top of the house to help CEOs and their leadership teams um, leverage people, right? I work across the talent lifecycle, talent acquisition, talent management, succession planning, all of that stuff, really at the end of the day to make sure that organizations are maximizing their investment in talent, that the right people are in the right place at the right time to drive results. And if you see, most of the issues that CEOs and boards are facing now are really people issues, right? So
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity, it's
Mm-hmm.
really about how people respond. Don't click on those links. Don't, if somebody tells you Bob, the CEO, said to, send them $50, don't do it. Because people are letting the cyber attackers in.
That's
Um,
right.
when we're when we're talking about that four-letter word that I mentioned, which is a reality that companies need to face, how the changing demographics of our workforce, it's a people issue. When we're talking about AI, really that's a people issue because people need to train that technology. They need to understand how to leverage the technology. So all of that, many of the, I would say most of the issues that companies are facing right now really are people issues. And so when I say I'm a CEO whisperer, it's really about those things.
Wow. So traditionally, are you an HR professional or you have come from different backgrounds or there's different portfolio aspects to who you are?
Well, I would say portfolio, but the domain that I've worked in is HR.
Mm,
But as a business professional, I would say I'm a business professional with HR domain expertise.
wow. Okay. So have you hovered in just IT, or you hovered in medical field, or you like have you had several different jobs but with HR? What does that look like?
Yes, I have had several different jobs, and I have worked in many different industries, but I would say in the last 15 or so years, I've focused in life sciences and healthcare, specifically
Mm,
biopharma, hospitals. I've run talent acquisition for an academic medical center and a regional hospital group. I help architect the diversity recruiting strategy for the oldest biotech, Genentech, and for Novartis, I helped the CEO of Pharma North America
mm.
create the succession plan for the commercial organization.
Wow. And because, I would think that, and it sounds like medical, but not really traditionally medical like hospitals, but the medicine side of it. Are
Well,
most
I
of
would say
them type A?
clinical
Are they
leadership,
type A
but
by
also,
nature?
yeah, yeah, yes, I would say yes.
So how do you get them to see outside of, I guess being a CEO whisperer is probably how, but how do you get a group of people like that to see differently? How do you do that?
Well, first, I would say my training as a diplomat has helped, right? If you
Mm,
talk about, the standoff between, US and China, for example, just modern day, the what's going on in the corporations, is nothing, right? Like I told you, I wrote my master's thesis in Sri Lanka during the Civil War. So
wow.
this is, pales in comparison, or at least I have the skills that have equipped me with that. Secondly, I would say I consider myself to be a painkiller,
Hmm.
which means that if the CEOs have issues, I'm going to come in and solve them. And when you're a solution uh, versus being a vitamin or a salve, right?
Hmm.
Then they're willing to listen. Type A, type B, type O, it doesn't matter.
Did you
I'm
say
a
type
problem
O?
Right.
Hilarious.
And that's what it is. When they have issues, I have solutions, and that's
Wow.
what it is.
Yeah, I've heard people say, other high level or executive level leaders say that they are disarming agents. And someone once told me that I was a disarmer. I am part of that cohort that was skilled in the not to mention word. Now I will just say the equity field. But the
Mhm.
people field is really what it is. If you really know that area and that expertise, it's really about people and it's really about opportunity. And I think
Mhm.
somewhere along the line, we just somewhere along the line, all of it got off track. But when you talk about being a disarming agent, it makes me think about what you said when you said you are a painkiller. You
Mhm.
go into a place and you settle things down. You kind of remove the ache, if you will, in a space. Not just we're not talking about bodies now, but we're talking about people, we're talking about organizations. That's a
Organization.
really dynamic skill to have and know
Mhm.
how to use it. It's one thing to have it, but oh yeah, I can do this, I can do that. It's on my resume. And then you get into a place and you completely fall apart. How
Mhm.
has that been for you in different fields? You say you've worked in several different jobs, going in and having to be a painkiller because, as we know, with a painkiller, depending on how much pain you have going on, you may have to take more painkillers. If you don't have
Oh,
as much, your tolerance level may be one painkiller. So, what does that look like when you go into these spaces? This is so exciting to me.
yeah. Well, I would, to extend that metaphor, right? Um, I would have to go in and diagnose the problem, right? Because
Mm,
I don't want to treat you for a pain in your foot if the pain is originating in your ear.
there you
So
go.
I have to figure out where the problem stems from and then try to address the root cause of the problem. I don't want to medicate to disguise the problem. I want to get to the root of the problem and then make it go away and create a solution. And that's a conversation. That's a diagnostic. And I, leverage data because the data tells the story.
Mm,
And I would say that's really the foundation of how that happens.
wow. Yeah, I my last certification that I received was as a belonging um facilitator. And
Mhm.
I did not know the difference until I went through this certification. For one, it was the only certification that I've ever received that was an oral certification, and there was nothing on paper to grade. It was
Yep.
absolutely um something out of my comfort zone, but it was very conversational and it
Mhm.
was based off of situations. And
Mhm.
I said, I am not going to pass this test. But he said, you have to think about you've got to put your toolbox away.
Mhm.
You've got to put your prejudices, your presuppositions, you've got to put your overgeneralizations, you've got to put all that stuff away when you're going
Mhm.
in to serve or service or
Mhm.
diagnose an organization. They don't care what you feel. They want
Oh,
you to
yeah.
come in and help them fix something. And that's a
Right.
very, to me, that's a very sticky space when you don't know what you're walking into because they could tell you anything from the onset. What has been one of your most challenging spaces that you've gone into over the years?
Yeah. Well, I almost hate to say this, recorded and live, but I would say that when I ran talent acquisition for a hospital,
Hmm.
um, it's so much of healthcare is really, again, about the workforce. So many of their challenges is around the workforce.
Yeah.
And I came to work one day and someone told me that I had killed a baby.
What?
And that was very hurtful. Yeah. So apparently what had happened was that the NICU, the neonatal ICU, was understaffed the night
Mm,
before. And because of that, a baby had died. And they blamed that on me as the head of talent acquisition. And so, you know, defensively, I said, well, you know, there are so many things that should have happened if you knew you were understaffed, and that could have happened, including paying another nurse 50 cents an hour more to come in rather than let a baby die. So I'm not going to let you lay that at my foot. However, that was a problem that
mm,
needed to be addressed so that it could never happen again, regardless of who was at fault. And so I would say that's probably one of the worst um, situations um, where we had to look at things about staffing proactively, having
mm,
an on-call workforce, having a contract workforce, even though my mandate was to reduce contract staffing costs. But, when you're talking about life and death, you
mm,
can't really nickel and dime. So how do we do that and still remain, solvent?
mm.
It's a challenge.
It is. It is a challenge. And I mean, since we're on the topic of HR, people think HR and they think paperwork, memos. No, it is so much broader than
Oh,
just
yeah.
that. And when I was in the military, because I retired from the army, my field was HR, which is completely different than the outside world, by the way. But everybody in the military would say, "Oh, just throw so and so in HR. Anybody can do HR." Not until you end up going to jail somewhere or you get fined legally. So it was handled like anybody could do it. Talk to me about your experience with people in HR that have probably fumbled the ball or mishandled it, or, in this case where someone blamed you because a child did not live. Like, what does that look like in all of your
Yeah.
experiences?
So I think people don't understand the consequences of, the work, the impact that HR has, and they don't understand really what good looks like with
That's
good
right.
HR and what impact that good HR can have. So, for example, I'll just give you a few. A few weeks or months ago, recently, we've seen in the news headlines about Boeing and some of their planes falling
Hmm.
out of the sky, apparently. and the CEO came on to CNBC, the news outlets, and took responsibility for that and said there was a culture of uh, lack of quality,
Hmm.
and that was the reason for it. That's an HR issue, driving the culture. Now, there are other people that should be involved in that, but typically that's a responsibility for initiating that and managing that that sits in HR. The folks at Boeing would complete a task and pass something along without it passing quality level that was acceptable. And
Wow.
that was okay, and that was the reason why the planes were falling out of the air. So that culture issue translated into again a safety issue. That's
Mm,
HR. I started my career in compensation,
mm,
um, and in actually in global compensation. And so if you think about compensation, uh, it's what how people are incented, how people are incentivized. So
mhm.
people will do what they're incentivized to do. And sometimes, if that incentive structure, if that compensation structure isn't set up properly, they will be incentivized to lie, cheat, and steal.
Yes.
That also can be an HR, an area where HR has impact. And we've seen some of those things in some of these organizations, um, some of these banks that were cheating people,
Mhm.
that were, giving people mortgages that didn't qualify for mortgages, setting them up to fail. All of these things because their compensation structure rewarded the bad behavior. That's
Wow.
another impact. There are life and death situations, right? And so if you think about that and you think about how good HR could have either prevented some of these bad outcomes or could really help drive good behavior, could help drive innovation. For example, there are cultures. I actually just recently posted about this on LinkedIn.
Mm,
Netflix has a culture of um, forgiving failure. They have 5 levels of delegation, and which means that they will delegate something to the lowest level possible, let people make decisions autonomously, provide them context and let them make decisions. They don't have bureaucracy. And that's what fueled their innovation, and that's what allowed them to put Blockbuster out of business. You can't
mhm.
move fast if you have to have 5 levels of approval for every move that you make.
Yes,
Right? You can't innovate if you're going to punish people for failing because new ideas don't come up if people are afraid to speak up.
that's true.
So these are the ways that HR can really help fuel great companies.
I like that.
And so those are just some examples.
I like so talk to me as we are literally about to land this plane
Okay.
with all parts in place, by the
Okay.
way.
Yes, please.
Talk to me about your why. Talk to me about where you are in your life. You seem to be well traveled, well learned, well rounded, and able to adjust and adapt. Tell me where you are now in life, and what you're doing. Like, why do you do what you do?
Yeah. So I think my work has become very purpose driven. And so I thought about like what that really means to me. And to summarize it, I will tell you that one, I'm a financial feminist. And what that means is that I encourage women to create wealth and to use it to support their values, to align their investing with their values, and to create generational wealth that uplifts their families. Secondly, I am a passionate health equity advocate. I believe everybody deserves access to good health care. And I believe that D word, that is come a four-letter word, drives that because the people at the top, the people in the boardroom and in the C-suite decide what's important, what gets funded, right? I am a cancer survivor, a breast cancer survivor.
Mm.
Um, and women's health does not get the same attention and funding as men's health. And I always say, if we have all men in the boardroom and he has to decide between his nuts and my tits, he's going to choose the little blue pill.
Oh,
So, thirdly, I am I am a passionate advocate of access to power for the same reasons. I think that people who have traditionally not had access to power should have access to power, and that problems should be solved. And I'm taking this from Kaufman Fellows. Problems should be solved by the people that experience them. Don't come into my
mm.
house and tell me what I need to do. I will tell you how I can address my problems. And if you want to scale that and make it a marketable problem, then you know, let me sit at the table. Fourthly, I want to be a voice for the voiceless and the
Mm.
overlooked. I like to tell those stories.
Yeah.
Um, and then lastly, I want to financially, emotionally, and intellectually support the underestimated, like Arlen Hamilton says, because there's opportunities there,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
So I support women, founders of color, immigrant founders, um, and I believe that's where creativity and innovation, and the future of creativity and innovation comes from. The best ideas are the ones that haven't been heard, that people haven't paid attention to. And just to give you an example, when you think that color doesn't matter, then if I need a prosthetic, right? A fake leg, a fake arm, or a fake boob, I don't want it to be peach. I want it to match my skin tone.
I
Please.
mean, let's be clear, Andrea, you are kind of peach right now. So you probably don't need to
Well,
be second.
that's just the lighting. I'm dark peach.
Dark peach. I cannot with you today, but go ahead.
So I'm just saying, those innovations. And look, I grew up at a time where we had to wear pantyhose to work, and those pink pantyhose were not hidden. And my brown sisters and those light pink pantyhose, it just like we needed somebody to say this is not it. And I know that example is kind of trite, but it's an example that I can think of because there are so many other
Yeah,
applications, right? So
absolutely.
nude to me and new to you and new to Demi Moore doesn't mean the same thing.
Mm-mm,
And we should
mm-mm.
all have options that work for us. So
I
um
love that.
that's it.
Wow. Listen, so as we get ready to close out, how can people find you? Like, are you on social media? Do you have a business, a company? You talked about so many different things that you do and what you offer.
Mhm.
Where can people plug into what you have to offer? I don't know if it's coaching, if it's facilitating. What is it that you offer, and how can people find you?
Yeah. So I would say that I am an executive recruiter, also known as a headhunter. And I in my spare time, I also do help current and aspiring board members connect to their first or their next board opportunity. All of that, people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Andrea Henderson with all the letters. So SPHRRACRCIR. That's me.
I love it. Listen, folks, Miss Andrea Henderson this evening, thank you so much. And we will be talking after this, so don't you log off because I've got questions.
I'll be
You all
here.
don't have to hear my questions because you don't get to have the backstage interview with Miss Andrea like I am. But thank you all so much. And we want to see you all back next week for the Married to My Purpose podcast. We will see you next week, folks. Good night.